Hello everyone, welcome to the 22nd tutorial in the series of Complete Guide to React.js. In this tutorial, we will see the practical knowledge of conditional rendering, what we discussed in previous tutorial. So at first what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create a new folder. Over here, I'm going to create a new folder, naming it as tutorial 22. And inside this folder, I'm going to create a new file and I'm going to name it as conditional rendering.js. And once I have created this, we have a code snippet RCC to generate the class components. And then I have to press tab. So in this conditional rendering, at first what I'll do is, at first I'll put some welcome note, like I'll put my name like hi Satish, like that, and I'll save it. And I need to import this in the app.js so that it works. So what I'll be doing is, I'll be commenting the code whichever I've written earlier, and instead of importing that, I'll be importing conditional rendering. Conditional rendering from tutorial 22 dot slash tutorial 22, whichever we have created now, and slash conditional rendering. So we have imported it and we need to include that particular tag over here. So I'll save it and I'll take a look at the browser. So when I take a look at the browser, it is saying hi Satish. So right now we will first verify the approach one which we have discussed in the previous tutorial. Approach one is nothing but like using the if else statement. So let's do that, and before that I'll put a constructor over here and I'll set some variables. Con is the code snippet for it, and in this I'll set state equals to some object. Is signed in, I'll give some name like this, and colon false. Okay, so there should not be any semicolon. I'm saving the same. So at first what we will take a look at is, we will look into the approach one which we have discussed, that is nothing but using if else statement. So at first what I'm going to do is, I'm going to write the if statement like this, and I'm going to examine this particular value signed in. So what I'm going to do is, this dot state dot is signed in. I'm going to check this. If it is true, then what I'm going to do is, I'm going to return a div tag inside this. So div hi Satish over here, and close it with the div tag, whichever that we have opened. Same way in the else block, what I'm going to do is, I'm going to return as guest. So what I'm trying to implement over here is, if the signed in value is true, then it would put my name. If I'm not signed in, then it would put welcome guest or I guest, like that. So that is what I'm trying to implement over here. So let me comment out this code which I have done earlier. So I'm going to comment out this. I'm going to put a semicolon as well over here, and we take a look at it, what is happening at the browser. So one more thing I just want to keep you posted in this is, you can take a look that inside the return method I am not using if else block, rather than outside I am using it. This is what I have explained previously in the last tutorial, that if else block cannot be used inside the return method, that is inside the JSX. This is a syntactical sugar of how the JSX should represent, how the React JSX should represent. So inside this you can't use if else. Instead outside you can use the same, and that's what I have used it over here. So let's take a look at the browser. It is showing I guessed because over here the signed in is false. And let me change it to true and see what happens. It's getting refreshed and it is giving you a value I Satish. That is, this block is getting executed because this is true. So this is one way of representing or doing a conditional rendering in React.js. So one thing what you can do is you can also like consolidate this value, and you can just have only one single return method, and this if else block can be preceded before coming to the return method. So how to do that, I'll show it to you. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy this block, and I'm going to say let greeting, and I'm just going to make a variable. So if it is signed in, then this greeting would be equal to this particular element, whichever that is returning. Okay, and else it would return this particular div tag. I'm just going to, there is nothing difference between the previous way of doing it and this one. Over here what I am doing is I'm just instead of having a div tag over here, I'm just putting that in assigning that into a variable, and I'm going to return that particular variable over here. So I'm going to mention return, and inside that return I'm going to mention greeting and put a semicolon. Save it, take a look at it. It is saying I Satish because it is true. So I'm going to modify it as a false, and let's see what happens. I modified it as false, it is showing yes. So this way your code looks cleaner over here. So this is one way of approach. So the next way is like I have said about the conditional rendering. So what is conditional rendering? Conditional rendering is somewhat like the most prominent way of executing the code, because inside the return method itself you can use the conditional rendering. You don't want to put if else outside like this. So how to do that, I'll explain the same right now. So I am going to remove all this code, and inside the return method what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a bracket and say that this dot state dot is signed in is a question mark. So if it is true, then what it will do is it would represent this particular div tag. So in the div tag what I'm going to do, I'm going to mention it as hi Satish. That means if it is true, if this value is true, this would be executed, and question mark, and after that there is some else block should be there, right? So in the else block we will put hi guess div, and inside that I'll put hi guess. Okay, I'll save it, and let's me take over here. It is showing guessed. That is because the value is false over here. If I mark it as true, it is giving my original name. So based on this particular value, it renders. So in real time, instead of this particular value, hard-coded value, you would get some values from your object, from your Java object, or from an input field, so or from a database itself. So those kind of things can be done. So the last one is I've been using operator. So we will also take a look at that particular approach as well. So that approach is very simple. So what that approach says is it would replaced by ampersand and ampersand, and it will not be having the else block. So what will happen over here is if this is true, this would get displayed, else nothing would get displayed. So this is one way of approach of doing a conditional rendering in React.js. Let me take a look at the browser. It is giving I Satish. That is because this value is true and this value is getting displayed. If it is false, then nothing would be displayed. This is one way of doing a conditional rendering in React.js. Alright, so just to recollect that we have looked into three approaches as we discussed in the previous tutorial. One is by using the if-else method, and second is by using a conditional expressions, and third by using operators. That is this particular ampersand symbol. With the help of that, I am able to conditionally render certain things in React component. That's all from today, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.